be a bit more informal, but suppose we're doing it now. Welcome to the October 22nd joint meeting between the Planning Board and the Architecture and Historic Review Board. While it's not the first such meeting, it is the first formal one, I believe. So welcome everyone. And, I think it was good for the applicant to start the presentation. I'd just like to say I think we're going to end at about 1:45, so we can, our two boards can meet and debrief for a few moments and put something together in writing for this project as it proceeds. Is everyone here? Yeah. Just give us a moment. We have one.
Also, Steve, do you just want to, in 2 sentences, just contextualize this meeting relative to the approval process? We have a public hearing in a week, and just what the idea was here.
Yeah, I think that the planning board has felt in general that it's very helpful to have joint meetings with the AHRB. We have done it less than we would like to, but this is one where we actually have had some joint meetings on the street, as I recall in the past, when we've looked at the proposal on the ground, as it were, and that's been helpful to us too. But this will be on our agenda for our next meeting, and it was felt by the board that it would be very helpful to meet with our colleagues from the AHRB at this point, so that we can understand how they feel about it, how the applicant could maybe perhaps get a sense of what the issues, if any, would be among them, between the boards or with each board. So, and we appreciate people coming out to be with us tonight.
Being visible or projecting out into the 10-foot setback from the aqueduct. So we made some changes, which I'll take you through tonight. So the drawings that we're going to be presenting tonight are the ones that were submitted to both the Architectural Review Board and the Planning Board. We gave it to the Architectural Review Board as part of your submission for this joint session, and we submitted it to the board, to the Planning Board for they call for a public hearing at their next meeting. So maybe kind of, you guys are so familiar with it, I think I don't need to go through a lot of detail on.
Right.
I think it would be good if you,
I just wanted to make sure that the 10-11 set is the most current
Yes.
that we're talking about.
Yeah, the one that we submitted for this meeting.
Okay.
So these are the drawings that we submitted to you. They're obviously a little bit difficult to read in the full sheet. So what I've done is kind of scan them to be a slightly larger scale. This is the original building up in the front. We are proposing an addition on the back of that building that is fronting on Elm Street. It's one structure. A lot of the issues that we talked about a while back, maybe 2 years ago, with open walkways and things like that, which had comments and concerns, are not in this scheme. This is a perhaps more conventional approach to it. On the ground floor, we have 8 parking spaces, access off of Elm Street. We have an entrance into a stair tower that's between the two buildings, the two structures, making a connection. We have the ability to walk steps through the door, come in from the parking area. And what we've proposed is a total of 4 additional units, with 2 on each of the floors above, second and third floor. There are 2 existing units in the main building, which will remain 2, although we may be changing the configuration. If we can flip it, so instead of having 2 duplexes, we'd have 2 flats. We'd be able to make the ground floor flat an ADA compliant unit, which we think would be a good idea. If we look at where we're at, this is the facade facing Elm Street. This is the existing building. Here's the open area where you drive underneath the building. We've taken ideas from previous schemes with the idea of breaking down the massing, comments that we got at the planning board regarding the concept of introducing a pitched roof, and several of the other ideas. One thing that's changed in this is before we had a stair tower here with an entrance coming into it, which I think was a problem for some of the members in the standpoint that maybe it seemed too frontal on Elm Street. What we've done is we put the entrance into the stair tower, so you can come in, that's the gap between the 2. So at this point, you've got 1 unit that's above facing Elm Street, 1 unit backing up to that, the second level facing Elm Street, the other unit backing up to that. The stair tower gives you access to the roof, which is something that we would like to do. I think it also might be something that we have to do, or at least we have to provide access to it. Looking at the back of the building, which is facing south, so that you don't see through the opening on from the aqueduct to see cars, we have the trellis that we introduced a while back. Everything else is just a mirror of the front, and then on the end, this is facing the aqueduct. So each one of these balconies is in a separate unit. And this is that trellis area that gives you screening as you walk by on the aqueduct so that you're not looking at the cars down below. One other thing I should really point out, going back to that site plan, this is the existing retaining wall for the aqueduct. The closest we are here is 10.6, or 10.3, I guess maybe. And that slopes away from us, so at this end, we're around something like that. The brise soleil comes out, or the trellis comes out about 5 feet on it. We have had a suggestion made by the village engineer. I don't know if it falls into his purview, or if it's planning board, or if it's everybody, but he's noted that what we're doing with the spacing under the building is what we would need if we were a commercial property. He's suggesting that if we wanted to give it some thought, we might be able to reduce the space between the parking spaces so that we would actually be able to get the cars fully under the building, which I think would be the preference of all. But we've also shown a significant amount of augmented screening along the aqueduct. I think most of you have walked by, you've seen that actually when you go by that building, even though that existing building is up on the aqueduct line, you actually are seeing trees more than you're seeing anything else. You're seeing the building kind of through the trees. Obviously, as we lose leaves, that'll be something that you see more of it in the wintertime. And so part of what we would be thinking here is augmenting the planting with broadleaf that don't get devoured by the deer, so that we would have year-round screening for the building. Okay, this is the section just showing how that works. This is how we're doing that sloped roof. To get the roof to have enough of a substance to the massing, we drop the plate down, and then we have the dormers giving you the height of the windows facing the outside. And what I'm understanding is the definition of this, and Mr. Manley, please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a sloped parapet. So this is not the roof, this is the 3-foot parapet that we're allowed to have on the building, even though it continues that roof line, which I think is an interesting way to get that resolved. This is going back to that 2015 memorandum that is the product of both this board and the planning board. And it hit on three primary concerns that it wanted us to address. One was the parking, which is that we would have, as close as possible, the number of spaces that are required fully on the site, with 4 new residential units with 2 bedrooms each, and 2 two-bedroom units in the existing building, which we're counting as part of what we have to provide the parking for. What our total requirement is actually none. So what we would be using is one of the 2 mechanisms that are currently in the code that provide us the right to ask the Board of Trustees to allow us to use either a curbside parking space or a pilot. It's been used on a number of other properties, and it seems to work. Something that, well, I'll go through these first. The second thing was that trying to get massing that on the barn site. Obviously, with the 10-foot setback, we're not in a position to do what we were trying to do in 2016, which was come up with a massing of the barn that was similar to it in the same place. Although I think the idea of the gabled roof and the scale of that building is similar, although it's smaller. It is a 2-story structure. So we've given that thought as part of this thinking of the massing for that. Also, I don't know whether this board is aware of it. We did go back, we were trying to protect the integrity of the previous design that the planning board recommended for approval, and this board indicated that it had, it was not going to review it further until such time as I think it was, the wording was until it's been dealt with on a level that was higher up. That was the August minutes in 2016. So what we tried to do is, since the Board of Trustees made it clear that they were not interested in giving a waiver on the 10-foot setback, they suggested that we go to the zoning board. We did so. We made a good case for it, but the zoning board denied giving us permission to use that scheme and build in that area as we originally had it designed. If you put that together with the decision that was made by the zoning board back in 2008, when we tried to get approvals to be able to reuse that structure, it gives us a lot of limitations on what can happen there. The third element in this, back in the memorandum in 2015, was the exterior circulation elements, which we had open at that time. I think the negative comment was that it seemed like it was a motel, because you could see people walking to their units, but that should not be an issue at all with this. We have a single tower entrance, all enclosed. There's no longer a staircase with windows in it that somebody could confuse as being a bedroom or something like that. So I think it meets those issues. Where it is. Maybe it's not in here, but it probably doesn't matter. This is just other stuff we had. Now, last thing is, I'll see if I can find it, because Steve Hunter asked if we could show some of the stuff from before, and I'm not sure that we have it. I don't think you need to see these kinds of things again. Well, actually, that's what I was thinking. Okay. So this was the design that we presented in 2016, which the planning board adopted a resolution recommending approval to the board of trustees. Obviously, this positioning is negated by the 10-foot setback to the aqueduct. So, we're not really able to do it in that way any longer. Let's see if this goes away. No. No, that goes. The other thing is we do have a SketchUp that we've done for this, and try and get you some views that might make some sense. So this is the view, basically from the village parking lot. If I position myself at eye level, I'd be right about, let's say, there. So here you can see how the gabled roof with the dormers, the balconies facing the aqueduct, the bridge part of the building where you drive under, this structure coming all the way down, being the same stucco as the front building, although I think it's important, we're not assuming that we were at a point yet of full resolution with architecture idea here is that this portion of the building, even though it's an addition, it carries from the existing building in materials and detail, and then everything that's behind that, which is the bridge and then the gable portion, that would be probably in a hardy plank, and, distinctly different texture and color. I don't know if you have any questions about views you'd like to see on this, we can do that, or we can go to you guys asking questions.
If you swing that around, I'm looking at that against the building across the street from it, for height.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I don't have, actual, working drawings on the building across the street. I'm not sure how we have that. We are compliant, with the new codes that were adopted last August, where they eliminated the fourth story and they reduced the permitted height in the downtown from 50 feet to 40 feet. So, instrumental in the way we've done this is to, design it so that it meets that height. This portion going up obviously goes taller than that, gives us access onto the roof, which I think is a good thing. If Steve would be willing at some point, give me a drawing of it, I could, if I knew exactly what the height of it was, I could bring that up to being accurate so that we'd have a more direct, comparison between the two. But this, we've just, we've done this by photographs, I don't know that we're accurate with it. Any other views people would like to see?
No, but I want to direct the AHRB towards the design issues that the planning board felt, like, well, we're not necessarily in agreement on, number one, and number two, we felt like this is where there really was overlap with the AHRB. The issue with one of the big issues, if you go, Patty rotated around to the other side, is the identity, if you could rotate it so that, like this way, so we can see the street side. So one issue was the degree to which the idea behind this was whether it was meant to be one building with the variety, whatever massing changes we would do to break down its scale, versus having it actually, have there be material changes between Main Street and the aqueduct. Right now, right, Patty, you have that first building, the first volume is the stucco that matches the Main Street building, and then you have a different finish cladding on the other two bays or whatever they are. So one issue that we was a place where the kind of massing things that the planning board might look at, in your opinion, from an architectural design point of view, overlap. And so I just want to call the AHRB's attention to that issue. At the end of the day, is it really, are we pretending it's 3 buildings, or are we pretending it's 2 buildings, or is it really, we're just accepting that it is 1 building with massing that breaks it up? So that was, I just want to cut to that, to the extent that it helps us.
I mean, feedback that we've gotten on not this, but on other buildings, is that if we were to make this portion of it match the front and carry that all the way around, that the scale of this building would seem too large for this location in the downtown. And that some effort needs to be made that it breaks it down in scale, which is why we've looked at variation in the massing as well as materials. One thing that might be kind of fun is that this, as we change from the brick actually to stone on the base of the portion that's under this, so that that stone wall, instead of having a section of stone wall that's a retaining wall here and then brick coming from it, everything going back from there would be the stone. And then that would, obviously, we don't know what the stone looks like right now with the aqueduct.
I'd like to just ask you to pause right, because I think we're delving into a very fine scale of detail when we haven't yet dealt with the much larger issue of the problem of massing. And this is a kind of, by conception, this is deeply flawed. And I think the fundamental problem is too ambitious a
program on too small a site. And I think since the previous iteration, which I had the same comment, I think we made that pretty clear in a memo some time ago to the Board of Trustees, both before we analyze the existing structure and after. And we found the massing to be sort of awkward and overwhelming. And since that, it has only continued on that course, and you exacerbated that problem by adding significantly more massing and significantly more awkward forms. And so I think what we're left with and what we're looking at now is something that just doesn't work on the site at all, particularly when you rotate around and you're looking at it from the parking lot rather of the Village Hall. And so I appreciate the thought behind, you know, looking at differentiating buildings, and, you know, there's something kind of playful and eclectic about that idea. It's just not, it's not expressed here anyway. You've just got a big full site block mass with a couple of relatively meaningless changes in material. And I can get into some other issues. The way that the parking is resolved, the whole building is lifted up. And so there's this, you know, you talk about a stone base, but really it's a kind of false base. And I don't see how this can ever lead, this kind of thinking and this kind of massing could ever lead to a good project on this site.
Well, I think it's fair to say, if I can interject, that, I mean, what we're hearing is that this is compliant with our codes. So I don't think it's a matter of whether, you know, this is not well done. Obviously, it's very half-baked in terms of design. There's some efforts here, but, so ultimately, to change the massing and the program, I don't think is, you know, if it's compliant with the codes, I think that has to be a starting point. How can we make this better, accepting that it is this volume, since that's compliant with the codes?
It's an interesting question, what's compliant with the code, because in my view, there is a criteria that has to follow on how you conceive the building. And the good thing that we have here is this open discussion on trying to improve the qualities of whatever we do in those fair. So I assume that we are part of the code as well, and I assume that demanding a higher degree of design in the downtown area is also part of the code. So I think that going back to the issue of, you know, let's say that I accept the challenge of being compliant with zoning regulations. I don't understand where the 80% lot coverage comes from, but I'll take it that as a part of, you know, it's an obstacle that we have to deal with and see how it works in this site. My opinion is, going back to what Michael was saying, is that for now it's a box with clad facades. That's what it is. And, you know, half-baked is right. We need to work on the design. Not an issue of materials and windows, but design. We have here a building that has probably three main facades, which is Main Street, the street, and the aqueduct, right? Basically,
You can actually see the back of the building from the aqueduct too.
right.
You
The back,
see all four sides.
the aqueduct is as an important facade as Main Street,
Yeah.
in my opinion, and I understand there are efforts in regulating whatever it's built next to the aqueduct, and I don't see the criteria being implemented here or anything of that, of value that we can say, this is a good example of a building that is next to the aqueduct, not in terms of massing, not in terms of facade. The facade, maybe the facade on, so take this, this facade is more successful than this one, when this is more relevant than this one, vis-à-vis the aqueduct. So all I'm trying to say is, it looks awkward, the building lifted. It's awkward, these openings for the parking. Maybe there should be like a closed stone base with a garage door or like a parking door or, a strong base. I don't know. I'm not in the positions of suggesting design directions, but I'm reacting to what I see. And I see that there is two elements, one existing structure, one proposed, connected by this we have the connector at 75 Main that we discussed, et cetera, et cetera. This will act as a same connector, but this is too narrow. It creates like I'm just saying this, it's funny looking. It's not proportioned to what you see, the massing of this, and it's kind of irrelevant in terms of proportions-wise. I'm just taking proportions. And where is the entrance to the building? I would say from here, right? Not from here.
I think, well, it doesn't matter what I think.
No, I'm just reacting to what it is. I saw the plans, and you say, okay, so you have probably the best views of the first floor apartment, or second floor apartment, sorry, is the aqueduct. And in the aqueduct, you put two windows and a bathroom, like, at the end of the long corridor, you put a toilet. And you say, there is some lack of sensitivity to where you are standing, that this carries from the toilet, on the plan, all the way to the entry to the building. And that's what needs to be worked out. And I'm trying to say that if we are developing this promising feature on Dobbs Ferry, which is the aqueduct, this should be an opportunity to propose the first step to something that is meaningful. And I'm,
I think, just to add on to what I think that it's been the same message from our board for a while, for a long time actually, because the old plan, right, where we were up against the aqueduct, right, the first iteration of that was much larger in massing, right? It had another floor on top of it. It was a much larger massing, right? And then that systematically was reduced based on comments on the massing carried through probably from the memo before my time on the board, right? And then when I was here. So I view this as a step backwards in that effect, right? Because you started off with a large massing, you started to hone in on what would be a little bit more acceptable with some, and I think other than the fact that the setback rule changed, we were coming to a better place with the old design. It was being fine-tuned. It wasn't a complete throw up your hands and this doesn't work, in my opinion. But this goes backwards to that effect, right? And now we're, the stair tower all the way up to access what would be a roof deck. It's not maintenance, right? You can do that with a simple roof hatch and a ladder.
Sure.
Right? So you don't need a big stair tower connector that's bigger than the rest of the building for access to the roof. You need it so you have a big roof deck that you can entertain on, right? And that you can have parties up on, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So, I share the sentiments in terms of massing, that it's much larger than what the site allows for.
Well, not than what the site allows for. It's
From
more than what the site-
from somebody's eye, right? I'm talking about just common sense. How much stuff can you put into a 10-pound bag, right? You're stuffing 12 pounds into a 10-pound bag. You should start thinking about stuffing 8 pounds into a 12-pound bag.
I think the one thing that I'm concerned about is the configuration of the base of the building on the street side that we're looking at right now. Because what is really the third floor of the building that faces Main Street becomes the first floor of the buildings beyond. And the experience of walking past that wall, you can see it right from the corner as you move past it. It's not a very inviting, community-oriented, outward-facing experience because you're you're really blocking that. You're making it this very substantial base that carries all the way up. So I think that there's something not very inviting about it. That's unfortunate in this current scheme.
Yeah, one of the challenges, just because I appreciate your comments, is we are trying to deal with a lot of different things that are directives that we've been given and preferences that boards have had. Obviously, a very simple solution is if you do not have the parking on site, you can do a lot of things that you wouldn't be able to do having the parking on site. One of the requests by the planning board was that we would try to do as much parking that was required as we could on site. And that takes a step. We did have other design concepts that we looked at, including 4 parking spaces and not having not seeing the garage, from the aqueduct. But those were perceived as not as preferential as having the 8 parking spaces. If you have 8 parking spaces on the site, there is no other place that you can put them other than underneath the building. So it's not practical that you be excavating, adjacent to the aqueduct, to go down and have, say, a complicated, expensive lift system that would take them and put them someplace else. And I don't think we want anything that looks like a parking garage structure as part of this. I don't think that would be an improvement. In terms of the scale of this, it's important to understand that we're talking about a footprint that's a little over 2,000 square feet. So it's not larger than the houses that are up the street. The 2 apartments on each floor are about a little over 1,000 square foot each. So it's rather relatively modest in terms of the actual scale and size of the building. The ceiling heights are not generous. It's not as though this thing tries to reach up and be taller or more massive. As we've reduced the permitted height, as we've required additional setbacks, what we've basically done as a village is say, well, if you're gonna have a viable economic project, then what you're gonna need to do is fill that box that you're permitted to build within. As you guys know, because we gave you drawings of designs that were different, we started this with a 4-story structure. I actually started this with a 4-story structure that did not have the garage on site. And we had a lot more room for other feeling facing Elm Street. That was part of our feature, that there was like more of a courtyard that you'd enter from. I thought it was a good design, but the feeling at that time was that we should be eliminate a story. In fact, we actually had a recommendation. It wasn't, I don't know what it was. It was a resolution adopted by the planning board that said, if the board of trustees is going to consider this, they would prefer that it be considered with 1 less story, going from 4 stories to 3 stories. We were directed back to the planning board. Back to the planning board, which we did, and we redesigned the project to be the height that this is, and that's what they recommended for approval. Since that time, the code has changed, increasing the number of parking spaces required and requiring a setback to the aqueduct. And the result is you have a very limited mass area within which to build. And while you could maybe make this work as 3 units instead of 4 units, I'm not sure that really makes the kind of differences that you guys are talking about.
Well, I think it's been consistent among both boards and the trustees that massing, the program feels too aggressive as a site. Even though it's only 2,000 square feet, it still feels that way. And I think that's been a consistent, maybe not all the.
Yeah, I'm not sure I feel that way. I'm not sure that there isn't
So some of the
an
planning board
architectural
members-
solution to,
It's been a consistent.
I'm not sure it's just a matter of how big it is. It might be, but I don't know that I'm not sure that it is, that's the core problem, but.
I'm okay with the scale of the building as presented. That's, obviously, I'm not in agreement with my fellow board members. My issue is with the design, the tower, the pitched roof next to the cornice, next to a tower, next to another cornice. It just, visually, it's too discordant. I think the scale is okay, personally. That's my personal opinion. But the design is a ways away.
When I first was in we've been hesitant to go into the actual design. Our goal is to get the understanding of mass and those things first, since so often in the past on the project, it seems like it's hard to get back to that discussion if we're getting too far into design. Ideas such as the pitch proof, it was a request, I thought it was an interesting one, I think it actually works well. Some of the bigger issues for this, and is really with the comments about other buildings being too massive in the build, a effort to break down the massing so that it is a scale that's similar to the older, smaller buildings in the downtown. I would think, if I had nothing to do with this project, I would be thinking that's something that makes sense. Because what you're doing is you're avoiding, as much as Steve's building across the street does, it breaks it down into a variety of elements instead of being one structure. You look at the buildings across the street, you often have the cornice next to something that's different. And obviously there needs to be a compatibility and resolution between them, which I'm not representing we're at.
But let's clarify something. You keep using this phrase, break down the massing, as if there's a very elaborate way in which this interacts, the forms interact with it. When in reality, there's just a kind of
That's not good.
really non-existent gesture with a little roof line and a modest relief here. That's not what that phrase means. And I think you're misrepresenting
Well, if somebody.
this project by saying that we've been asked to break down the mass and we've gone and we've approached it that way, but none of us see that. It's just that's not what this
I think
design
you're not
is
seeing
doing.
that, you're not looking at it clearly. If
Oh,
we have
no,
a
I'm-
facade that's a certain length, and we break it into components, whether those are resolved in one way or another, the roofs are different, not different, it breaks down what the apparent mass of the building is.
Yeah, but why appear, why work with appearances when we can,
Thank you.
because it's the apply, is the concept of like a mold, that you apply it to a box. And then you apply different stores, and it means like, what you're trying to do is hide the box. And why depart from a box
Well,
as a point of departure?
and if the feeling was that it would be better to do it as the box and allow that, I have no problem with that at all. We started with it.
If
We
the
were
feeling-
led to the
whose-
idea of,
Whose feeling?
hmm?
If you said the feeling was to do it as a box?
If there was a support for this, since this is such a small building,
Hey,
that it would be better that maybe at that point, there's the front building and there's the back building. And the back building is all done in one look, one aesthetic, maybe even a different aesthetic, and not trying to be something that ties in with the other. I mean, we would have no problem with that. The comments that we've gotten over the last 4 years on this has led us in the opposite direction.
For 4 years, we've been discussing about,
And
with
true.
different premises and different set of issues. Now we are here with this one. So
Right.
whatever we discussed back then, it's good as a reference, but
Well, I think, the experience of the last 4 or 5 years here, I'm not sure the code has caught up with the experience and the feelings that people have about the type of buildings that they would like to see and the size of buildings. And I think that's one of the.
You don't think that recent changes were an addressing of that concern?
what,
Yeah.
It's all a move in the right direction, but I'm not sure that we're at the point. The trick is that people, I think, in general, would like something smaller, and the economics in smaller may not make sense for developers. I don't know that, because that's
Well,
not,
we're not talking developers here, we're not talking development, we're talking of an idea, of a way
Well,
of using a site
well,
and
but,
how it can be more viable part of the
yeah, but you
town.
need, somebody has to want to do something to make that
Right.
possible. We're not
And-
dealing
and
with a
if
theoretical
The
discussion.
goal is to eliminate that from Dobbs, which might be, and the kind of changes that they're making are leading in the right direction. I mean, right now, this is me. I'm trying to get this approved, but the owner has indicated if I was able to get something approved several years ago, what we were very concerned about in Dobbs Ferry was the number of buildings in the downtown that needed significant renovation work. And we worked hard to adopt a new code that would favor that and would support it and would make it much lower hurdles. Changing parking regulations, obviously a major step towards that. It sounds from what you said was that the feeling is that it went too far and too much has been allowed to happen and we need to ratchet it back. And if that's what the village is doing, that's understandable and that could be the message.
So in this design, just so I'm clear, because it's my concern, one of my concerns, what is the parking? Is the parking all underneath the building?
There's 8 parking spaces under the building and 9 parking spaces are required.
It doesn't go out underneath a trellis or anything?
That's, George has made that recommendation. He is the village engineer, George Palmer.
He's made which?
He's recommended that what I'm going for is if I was designing the parking lot at Stop and Shop, that the village code has requirements for size of spaces and then the space between the parking spaces. So what the drawing that we've submitted to you, that meets those requirements, but it projects 4.5 feet past the end of the structure itself, which is why we still have the trellis. If we were to reduce the area under the building that's given for the aisle between the parking spaces, that could be made tighter. Now, I'm gonna defer to him on that because I can see the next thing I do is I say, great, and I design it that way, and then the reason that people are saying they can't approve this is because we don't have a 24-foot aisle. So it's kind of like taking, I'd rather somebody else is making the recommendation, we're trying to do it.
Ed, did you want to jump in here?
I wanted to say that the things that are not compliant is the parking setback and the tower height.
Ed, can we get you on a mic, please? Thank you.
I just want to say, the things that are not compliant are the parking distance, there's no 10-foot setback to the aqueduct, to the property line. And the tower height, which doesn't need to be that, but it could if, you all wanted to let it be that. But the width of the aisle between 90-degree parking has to be that. It's not just in a stop and shop, it's in anything other than a 1 and 2 family. Those are if you angle it, then the aisle in between can be reduced, but you can't angle it when you only have one way in the middle, because you have to back out into the roadway to get out. So that needs to stay that width. The parking either gets a waiver to be that close, or it gets reduced and a pilot. So these are the things you need to look at. It could be less units, reduce the parking, give a pilot, give some credit for on the street. If you have less units and less parking, you drop one down, this whole thing can come down on that side. I mean, there's options. So I'm just telling you what's not compliant. When we say this is here, and it's not fully compliant with height and setbacks for the building, yes. For the parking and the height for that tower, no.
Thank you.
And when you say the tower is not compliant, if it has no habitable space, it's not permitted to go up.
Well, you're allowed to go up with machinery rooms, elevator shafts, things like that. If you had to get to that roof, and you wanted to have a roof deck, then you would need that tower, allow that tower to go higher. But as machinery maintenance, like Brandon said, you can stop the tower there, put a hatch in the roof.
Yeah, I can hold the equipment a certain distance off the edge and fully blend. The question I have though is the reverse. Is there something that says that I can't have a tower that goes up as long as is less than 20%?
I think the intent of the code is to allow machinery rooms that are necessary to exceed the height limit. To just say this is not occupied
any other comments from planning board members or HRB?
I guess I'm not any clearer on what the position is with the parking. I mean, currently the barn is sitting, is it on the wall?
Yeah.
It's on the aqueduct wall, and there's no basement, so there's ground in that area, right? So I think part of the conundrum is that the parking is entirely below what is currently grade. And so is it building within that space? It's underground. In New York City, of course, this would not be an issue, because that's not, sort of usable area. So I think that's the conundrum that we've come up against. You shield it, you're not allowed to build a structure to even cover it. So what are the, what are the possible remedies? Is he not allowed to even excavate up to that space, up to the wall?
The way to use the space would be to use the barn.
You're not allowed to use the barn.
Really? It's
That
ground.
was the decision of the zoning board in
Oh,
2008.
you have to take it down, get rid of it, or?
Well, we fought to save it. So 2008, it was ordered to take it down. We went to the zoning board, and they agreed that as long as the building was used only for storage and nothing else, including they did want cars in it, and the owner of the building made certain repairs, it would be allowed to remain, but it couldn't be changed in use. There was a proposal to actually do it as 2 residential units, and they denied that
So
application.
what would be involved in allowing parking in the barn, in the front of the barn?
I mean, I don't think there's a rule with that much time that you couldn't go back to the zoning board. So probably go back to the zoning board. I don't know that accomplishes a lot though. So, I mean, I'd have to really look into.
Just a question.
Yeah. I mean, in other words, to use the existing garage structure as the garage and have 4 parking spaces in there, which gives us more room on the site, which is useful, but,
But that's in the 10-foot zone, isn't it?
right, that's why I
That's
find
not-
it's like.
It's not gonna work. Well,
I'm
it's not gonna meet that.
not,
It's not gonna get past Steve.
obviously, if somebody suggests something to see how it would work, and obviously, there's an existing structure there. It's a structure that is violating the 10-foot setback, but I don't, I don't know the rules in this. Yeah.
Anything else? Is this,
So I think,
no, it's very useful. I appreciate your letting us join you tonight.
yeah, thanks for coming on the night we already have to be here.
Yeah, I know.
Michael, you did say that. When I said, can we have it, go here, it's the same thing I review. Which is good. That's it.
And thank you for the applicant's work.
Thank you very much.